This morning, we woke up to some very serious and troubling news from Wall Street. You know, the situation with Lehman Brothers and other financial institutions is the latest in a wave of crises that are generating enormous uncertainty about the future of our financial markets. This turmoil is a major threat to our economy and its ability to create good-paying jobs all across America and to help working Americans pay their bills and save for their future and make their mortgage payments. Now, today offers more evidence that too many folks in Washington and on Wall Street weren't minding the store. You know, for 8 years, we've had policies that have shredded consumer protections and loosened oversight and regulation and encouraged outsized bonuses for CEOs while ignoring middle-class Americans. And the result is the most serious financial crisis that we've seen in generations. Now, I certainly don't fault Senator McCain for these problems, but I do fault the economic philosophy that he subscribes to. Let me describe this for you, because it's the same philosophy that we've had for the last 8 years. One that says we should give more and more to those with the most. And hope that prosperity trickles down to everyone else. How many people have felt prosperity trickling down here in Pueblo? It's a philosophy that says no to even common sense regulations. Ones that say that we should just stick our heads in the sand and ignore economic problems until they spiral into crisis. Well, now instead of prosperity trickling down, the pain's trickled up. From the struggles of hardworking Americans on Main Street to the largest firms on Wall Street. And it's not that I think John McCain doesn't care what's going on in the lives of most Americans. I just think he doesn't know. I don't think John McCain gets what's happening between the mountain in Sedona where he lives and the corridors of power in Washington where he works. Because if he did get it, he would have different policies. Why else would he say that we've made great progress economically under George Bush? I mean, that's not what somebody who gets it would say. Why else would he say that the economy isn't something he understands as well as he should? Why else would he say today, of all days, he said this just this morning, that the fundamentals of the economy are still strong? Now, Senator McCain, what economy are you talking about? Because, Pueblo, I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything more fundamental than the ability to find a job that pays the bills. What's more fundamental than knowing that your life savings is secure and that you can retire with dignity and respect? What's more fundamental than knowing that you'll have a roof over your head at the end of the day? What's more fundamental than making sure that you can send your child to college and that they can live out their American dream? There's nothing more fundamental than that. That's the measure of whether the economy is strong. Now, Pueblo, I just want you to know, a few hours later, after he said this morning he had said this, the economy fundamentals are still strong. A few hours later, John McCain's campaign sent him back out to clean up these remarks because they thought, well, maybe that's not going to work out too well. So he explained that what he really meant to say was that American workers are strong. Now, come on, Senator McCain. We know what you meant when you said it the first time, because you've said it before. You said it just a few weeks ago. And your chief economic advisor, the man who wrote your economic plan, said that we are in a, quote, mental recession, that this is all in our heads, that we're a nation of whiners. That's what he called you, a nation of whiners. This is the guy who's been advising McCain's campaign, and who, by the way, was the head of the banking committee and helped usher in some of the deregulation on Wall Street. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. When Senator McCain says that American workers are the backbone of our economy and that they aren't getting a fair shake from Washington, he'll get no argument from me. In fact, my attitude is it's about time that he figured that out, because I've been making the case for 19 months. So I congratulate Senator McCain for saying something good about American workers. I think it's good that Senator McCain is celebrating the American worker today. But it would have been nice if, over the last 26 years that he's been in Washington, that he actually stood up for them once in a while. It would have been nice if he didn't vote against the minimum wage 19 times, or if he didn't vote to privatize Social Security and hand it over to Wall Street. It would have been nice if he had opposed the tax cuts for corporations that have shipped jobs overseas, or the hundreds of billions of dollars in corporate tax giveaways that have helped plunge our country into crippling debt. It would have been nice if he had a plan to lower the health care costs of American workers or get them any health care whatsoever. And it would have been nice if he had championed a single plan to make college more affordable, or to make young people better able to get retrained if they lose their job. Senator McCain, you can't run away from your words, and you can't run away from your record. When it comes to this economy, you've stood firmly with George Bush and a failed economic theory, and what you're offering the American people is more of the same. And that's why we can't afford John McCain, because this country can't afford another 4 years of failed philosophies. We can't afford 4 more years of what we've had the last 8. For years, I've called for us to modernize the rules of the road to suit a 21st century marketplace, rules that would protect American investors and consumers. I've called for policies that grow our economy and our middle class together. For years, I have fought to make sure that workers have basic rights, and that they've got a minimum wage, and that they are protected at the workplace. And in 50 days, you'll have the chance to bring about the changes that we have been talking about throughout this campaign. In 50 days, you'll walk into that voting booth, pull back that curtain, and choose the future that you want for Colorado, the future you want for Pueblo, the future you want for America. That's what this election's about. This is a defining moment in our history. They don't come around that often, but this is one of them. A moment when our nation is in the middle of 2 wars. A moment when our economy is in turmoil. A moment when the very values that have made America what it is are being threatened by the politics and policies of Washington. What's under assault in that city is nothing less than the idea that America is a place where you can always make it if you try. That in this country, anyone with the drive and the will should be able to find a job that pays the living wage and that supports a family that in America we don't just reward wealth, but we respect the workers and the work who create all our wealth. What's at stake in this election is whether this nation in the 21st century will continue to be the last best hope on earth. That's what this election is about. It's not about me or Joe Biden. It's not about John McCain or Sarah Palin. It's not about Paris Hilton. It's not about Britney Spears. It's not about lipstick. It's not about pigs. It's about you, Pueblo. It's about you, the American people. It's about whether you'll be able to sell your home for what it's worth, or whether you'll put enough money away each week so that someday you can watch your child accept a college diploma. It's about whether you'll finally have leaders who understand what's going on in the lives of people who haven't spent their lives in Washington. Leaders who haven't forgotten why we sent them there. Leaders who will fight for you now and tomorrow and next year and 10 years from now. People who understand what Americans are going through each and every day. I began this race as the one candidate who hasn't spent a lot of time steeped in the ways of Washington. But I've been there long enough to know that if we want to keep the promise of America alive, the ways of Washington, they must change. And they must change now. Not yesterday, not 4 days from now, they need to change right now. We have to change a system of special interests and of lobbyists who've turned our government into a game that only they can afford to play. We have to change the Karl Rove brand of politics that we've seen in the last few weeks. The politics that would divide this country just to win an election, where phony debates and false advertisement, lies and spin consume a campaign that should be about you, that should be about the issues, the great challenges of our time. And we must change the policies that have caused incomes to drop and jobs to disappear, home values to plummet, and health care costs to skyrocket. We have to change the policies that have devastated our middle class and shaken the foundation of our economy. We must end the policies of the last 8 years. It is as simple as that. This has been Pueblo, this has been our message from the day we began this campaign. This has been our message when we were up in the polls and when we were down in the polls. When folks said we were sure to win and folks said we were sure to lose. And until now, that's not been John McCain's message. For the last 19 months, he has argued that we don't need change. What qualifies him to be president is the quarter century he's spent in Washington. The experience that comes from decades of walking the halls of power. But now, suddenly, John McCain says he's about change too. He's even started using our lines. He's saying he wants to turn the page. He says he wants to take on the lobbyists. He even put out an ad today, get this, saying that Governor Palin and he would bring, and I quote, the change that we need. Does that sound familiar? Listen, they say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But you know what? Pueblo, instead of borrowing our lines or our slogans, I wish you'd actually borrow some of our ideas. Let me tell you this. If Senator if Senator McCain now wants to talk about who can bring change to Washington, that's a debate that I'm happy to have. You know, it's great that he now wants to talk about putting corporate lobbyists in their place, but he needs to explain why did he put 7 of them in charge of his campaign. Lobbyists for the insurance and the oil industry, for Freddie Mac and foreign governments. And if you think those lobbyists are working day and night for John McCain just to put themselves out of work, well, let me tell you, I've got a bridge to sell you up in Alaska. I agree with John McCain that bipartisanship and independence are important. But it was just a few months ago that John McCain was bragging about how he's voted with George Bush 90% of the time. 90%. What kind of judgment or independence does it show if you think George Bush was right 90% of the time? I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like change to me. I'm not ready to take a 10% chance on change. I want 100% guarantee that we're going to change America. That's why I'm running for president of the United States of America. We can't risk this election on promises and slogans, not this time, not now. We are facing some serious challenges. Serious challenges in this country, both domestically and internationally. But on just about every economic issue, there is not a dime's worth of difference between John McCain's proposals and what we have right now. In 19 months, he has not named one thing he would do differently from this administration on the central issue of this election. Not one thing. And we know that if we go down that path, the next 4 years will look exactly like the last 8. That's not a risk I'm willing to take. That's not a future I want for my children or for your children. That's not the America I know or the America I grew up in. That's not the America you know and the America you believe in. We want something different. Let me tell you, when I talk to those young veterans who come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, you know what I see? I see my grandfather, who signed up after Pearl Harbor, marched in Patton's army, and was rewarded by a grateful nation with a chance to go to college on the GI Bill. In the face of a young student I met who sleeps just 3 hours a night before working the night shift because she's going to school, but she also has to take care of a sister with cerebral palsy. I think about my mom, who raised my sister and me on her own while she worked and earned her college degree, who once turned to food stamps to help take care of her kids, but was still able to send us to some of the best schools in the country. When I listen to another worker tell me that his factory shut down, that he's had to pack up the equipment to ship it to China, and he's lost not just his job, but he's lost his health care, he's lost his pension, and he's lost his sense of dignity. That sense that work gives him, a sense of purpose. I remember all those men and women on the south side of Chicago who I stood by and fought for 2 decades ago after the local steel plant closed. People in Pueblo know something about local steel plants closing. Those are my heroes. Their stories are the ones that shaped me and my life and my values. It's on their behalf that I intend to win this election and keep the promise of America alive as President of the United States of America. Now, from the day we began this election, I've said that the change we need is both a change in our policies and our politics. If we want to meet the challenges we've talked about for decades, we need to end the entire culture of money and influence in Washington. We need to stop the partisan point scoring and the petty bickering that serves the needs of politicians, but not the needs of the American people. We have always been at our best when our leaders have rallied us around a common purpose, a higher purpose. And I'm running for president because that's the kind of leadership that we need right now. That's the kind of country we need to be right now. So let me spell out exactly. Let me spell out, because sometimes I hear people saying, well, yeah, he says change, but I don't know what it means. Let me spell out exactly how I would keep that promise if I'm president. Let me tell you what change really means. Not change as a slogan, not change as trying to pretend you didn't say what you said earlier, but change that will make an impact in your life. Change is a Washington where corporate lobbyists and their clients don't set the agenda, where you do. I've spent my career taking on lobbyists and their money, and I've won. If you wanted a special favor in Illinois, when I first got in the state legislature, there was actually a law that let you give campaign cash to politicians for their own personal use. In the State House, they called it business as usual. I called it legalized bribery. And it didn't make me the most popular guy in Springfield, but I put an end to it. And when I got to Washington, we saw some of the worst corruption since Watergate. And I led the fight for reform in my party, and let me tell you, not everyone in my party was too happy about it. When I proposed forcing lobbyists to disclose who they were raising money from and who in Congress they were funneling it to, I had a few choice words directed my way on the floor of the Senate. But we got it done. We got it done, and we banned gifts from lobbyists and meals from lobbyists and rides on their fancy jets. I am the only candidate who can say that Washington lobbyists do not fund my campaign. They will not run my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I'm president of the United States of America. That's what change is. Change means a tax code that doesn't reward special interests who wrote it, but the American workers and small businesses who deserve it. So unlike John McCain, I will stop giving tax breaks to corporations that ship jobs overseas, and I will start giving them to companies that create good jobs right here in America. And I'll eliminate capital gains taxes for small businesses and startups, because that's how we're going to grow our economy and create the high-wage, high-tech jobs of tomorrow. And I will cut taxes for 95% of working families. 95%. My opponent doesn't want you to know this, but under my plan, tax rates will actually be lower than they were under Ronald Reagan. Under my tax plan, if you make less than $250,000 a year, you will not see your taxes go up, not any taxes, not your payroll tax, not capital gains taxes, nothing. Not a single dime. In fact, I offer 3 times the tax relief for middle-class families as John McCain does. Because in an economy like this one, the last thing that you need is higher taxes. So when you see those ads with John McCain saying, I'm going to raise your taxes, understand they're not telling the truth. For the sake of our economy, our security, and the future of our planet, I also want to set a clear goal as president. In 10 years, we will eliminate the oil we import from the Middle East right now. Now is the time to end this addiction. Now is the time to end this addiction. You know, you heard Governor Ritter and you heard Senator Salazar talk about the opportunities of a new energy economy. We are seeing it right here in Pueblo, 500 new jobs that can't be exported, creating clean energy. That's the kind of vision we need, but we don't just need it in the State House, we need it in the White House. And we have to understand, we need a president who understands that while, yes, we have to drill for more oil, we have to increase domestic production, drilling alone won't be a long-term solution. Not even close. As president, I will tap our natural gas reserves, invest in new clean coal technologies, and find ways to safely harness nuclear power. And I'll help our auto companies retool so that the fuel-efficient cars of the future are built right here in the United States of America. Not in Japan, not in South Korea, but right here in the US of A. And I'll make it easier for the American people to afford these new cars. We'll invest $150 billion over the next decade in affordable, renewable sources of energy, in wind power and solar power, and the next generation of biofuels, an investment that will lead to new industries and 5 million new jobs that pay well and can't ever be outsourced. So when you hear that John McCain's talking about change, understand he's been against solar power. He's been against wind power. You see these ads, he's got a wind tower, a wind turbine, a windmill up there. If he had had his way, you'd have a gopher hole there. You wouldn't have a windmill because he's been against those things. The same way he talks about rural America, and he's opposed every single important farm program that we need right here to make sure that farms are viable and to look after family farms in America. And now he wants to monkey around with the water agreement that's been made that helps make agriculture viable. That's not the kind of change you're looking for here, Pueblo. That's not the kind of change we need here in America. Now is not the time for small plans. Now is the time to finally meet our moral obligation to provide every child a world-class education, because it will take nothing less to compete in the global economy. John McCain doesn't have a plan. I'll recruit an army of new teachers, and we're going to pay them higher salaries, and we're going to give them more support. But in exchange, I'll ask for higher standards and more accountability and new creative ways to make sure our children are getting the education they deserve. And we're going to keep our promise to every young American. If you commit to serving your community or your country, whether in the military or in the Peace Corps or doing community service, then we will guarantee you that you can afford to go to college. You invest in America, we'll invest in you. That's a bargain we can make. Pueblo, now is the time to finally keep the promise of affordable, accessible health care for every single American. If you have health care, my plan will lower your premiums. If you don't, you'll be able to get the same kind of coverage that members of Congress give themselves. And I will finally put an end to insurance companies discriminating against those who are sick and in need of care the most, because that's not right. That's not who we are as Americans. That's one of the reasons I'm running for President of the United States. Now is the time. Now is the time to change our bankruptcy laws so your pensions are protected ahead of CEO bonuses. Now is the time to protect Social Security for future generations. Now's the time to keep the promise of equal pay for equal work, because I want my daughters to have the exact same opportunities as somebody else's sons. That's just plain right. That's the right thing for women. That's the right thing for families. It's the right thing for America. Now, I'm the first one to admit, many of these plans are going to cost money. And that's why we've got to change our priorities. See, I've laid out how I will pay for every dime. By closing corporate loopholes, by closing tax havens that don't help America grow. But I'll also go through the federal budget, line by line, and I will eliminate the programs that no longer work, even the ones that are popular with Democrats, and make the ones that we do need work better, so they cost less and give taxpayers their money's worth. I'm not a Democrat who believes that solving our problems just require more money. You know, it's also going to require innovation and creativity, it's going to require a renewed sense of responsibility from each of us. You know, government must lead on energy independence. That's what Governor Ritter and Senator Salazar have been doing. But each of us must do our part to make our homes and businesses more efficient. The same is true when it comes to conserving our water. Yes, we must provide for more ladders to success for young men who fall into lives of crime and disrepair, but we also have to admit that programs alone can't replace parents, that government can't turn off the television and make a child do their homework, that fathers have to take more responsibility and give their child some encouragement and love and guidance. That's part of what we need in America. That's part of the change that we seek. And Pueblo, I believe that even as we keep that promise for the next generation here at home, we also have to keep America's promise abroad. John McCain wants to have a debate about who has the temperament and judgment to serve as commander-in-chief. I want to have that debate with John McCain. For while John McCain was turning his sights to Iraq just days after 9/11, I stood up and opposed this war, knowing that it would distract us, from the real battle we had to fight, the real threats we faced in Afghanistan and bin Laden and those who actually killed 3,000 Americans. When John McCain said we could, and I quote, muddle through in Afghanistan, I argued for more resources and more troops to finish the fight against the terrorists who actually attacked us, and made clear that we must take out Osama bin Laden and his lieutenants if we have them in our sights. John McCain says he wants to chase bin Laden to the gates of hell. He just needs to chase him to the caves where he lives, and that's what I will do. That's what we will do. That's what America will do when we have our priorities straight. And today, as my call for a time frame to remove our troops from Iraq has been echoed by the Iraqi government and even by the Bush administration, even after we've learned that Iraq has a $79 billion surplus while we're wallowing in deficits, John McCain stands alone in his stubborn refusal to have a plan to end this misguided war. That's not the judgment we need. That won't keep America safe. We need a president who can face the threats of the future, not keep grasping at the ideas of the past. As Commander-in-Chief, I will never hesitate to defend this nation, but I will only send our troops into harm's way with a clear mission and a sacred commitment to give them the equipment and training they need in battle and the care and benefits they deserve when they come home. No more homeless veterans. No more begging for disability payments. We will treat our veterans with the honor and the respect that they deserve. So, Pueblo, I will end this war in Iraq responsibly. I will finish the job in Afghanistan against al-Qaeda and the Taliban. I will rebuild our military to meet future conflicts. But I also want to build new alliances to defeat the threats of the 21st century: terrorism and nuclear proliferation, poverty and genocide, climate change and disease. And I will restore our moral standing so that America is once again seen as the last best hope for all who are called to the cause of freedom, all who long for lives of peace, all who learn for a better future. In the weeks ahead, I look forward to debating these policies with John McCain. Unlike his campaign, though, what I won't do is challenge his intentions, challenge his patriotism, because patriotism has no party. I love this country. So do you. So does John McCain. The men and women who serve in our battlefields, they may be Democrats and Republicans and independents, but they have fought together and they have bled together, and some have died together under the same proud flag. They have not served a red America or a blue America. They serve the United States of America. That's the mission of this campaign, to bring this country together. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young and old, around a common purpose, a higher purpose. That's what we need right now. That's the change I believe in. The times are too serious. The times are too serious and the stakes are too high to allow the other side to pull the same stunts and use the same scare tactics that they always do. Because we know what the consequences are. We've lived them. We've seen them turn entire campaigns and debate about swift boats and windsurfing instead of about health care and education. And what do we get when it's over? Iraq and Katrina and millions of people without jobs or homes or health care. Young people without opportunities to go to college. Children languishing in poverty. Wall Street teetering on the brink of disaster. Enough. 8 years is enough. We will not allow it again. Not this time, not now, not this year. We can't afford to let them make another big election become about small things. Now, this won't be easy. Pueblo, it won't be easy. The kind of change that we're looking for never is. What we're up against is a very powerful, entrenched status quo in Washington. They will say anything, they will do anything, and they will fight with everything they've got to keep things just the way they are. They don't know how to govern, but they're good at campaigning. And they're good at working the media. But I feel good about our chances. I feel good about our chances here in Colorado. I feel good about our chances all across the country. Because in this election, I've got something more powerful than they do. I've got you. I've got you. In this campaign, you've already shown what history teaches us, that at defining moments like this one, the change we need doesn't come from Washington. Change comes to Washington. This is one of those moments, Pueblo. This is one of those times we can't afford to let slip away. I am running for president because I don't want to wake up 4 years from now and find out that millions more Americans still lack health care because we didn't have the courage to take on the insurance industry. I don't want to see that we're still sending billions of dollars to the Middle East because we couldn't find a way to stop buying oil from dictators. I don't want to see more Americans fell out of the middle class and into poverty. I don't want to see homeless veterans on the streets. I don't want to send another generation of Americans to schools that can't compete. I don't want that future for my children. I don't want that future for your children. I don't want that future for America. But Pueblo, I can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. I need you to make it happen. So if you want the next 4 years looking just like the last 8, then I'm not your candidate. But if you want real change, if you want an economy that rewards work and tax relief for the middle class, if you want renewable energy and new clean jobs, if you want health care and college you can afford, if you want to end this war so we can start restoring our standing in the world and rebuilding America, then I am asking you here today to knock on some doors and make some phone calls and do some community organizing and give me your vote on November 4th. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get busy and get to work. And you and I together, we are going to change this country and we're going to change the world. Thank you, everybody. God bless you. God bless America.